Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Have you serviced your farm's most important asset? Soil is your most powerful machine. See more at smartnutritionmst.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have a great guest joining us. We have Josée Lemoine from Backswath Management. How are you, Josée?
I'm doing great, Tracy. Thank you.
Excellent. So we have Josée joining us today to speak about strategic planning, and we're tagging on the term hope is not a strategy. So I'm really excited about this episode, and we're really happy to have you, Josée. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Great. I'm so pleased to be here as well. And hope is not a strategy. You're right. There is sometimes a little bit of hope involved, but if we strategize correctly, hope can actually be not just hope, but in reality, something that'll happen.
I love it. It was a bit tongue in cheek because I know us as farmers, we put the crop in the ground and then we hope and we pray. So it's a bit tongue in cheek, but you know what? We all know the value of strategic planning. And if we don't, by the end of this episode, they will. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and chat a little bit more about Backswath and what you guys do there?
Well, for sure. So Josée Lemoine, I have been a management consultant for 20 plus years now. I'm a certified management consultant as well since 2001. So that's a formal designation that identifies me as a management consultant by career, not just in between jobs. So a higher level of consulting. And I have been leading and facilitating strategic planning sessions for just as long. It really is why I got into consulting, was through facilitation. And so I have worked over my career with probably, I keep saying 100, I should probably count now. It's probably been more than 100 organizations in that time span, It has ranged from small not-for-profits to large crown corporations, and certainly a lot of privately owned businesses as well. And so through that, it's been facilitating small groups. So sometimes just myself and the owner, and large groups. I have done town halls where we've had over 100 people, and we're facilitating that, and that's kind of feeding the whole strategic planning process. So most recently, I've joined Backswath Management. So that was in August of 2019. So I merged my consulting company in with Backswath, and Terry Betker and I are now working together and building a farm management practice across Canada. And so we are building a team, and in there we have not just the strategic planning services, but what falls out of strategic planning. So there's a lot of other elements that come into play once you've got your plan in place.
Excellent. I'm excited. This is a process that I've done multiple times in my business. I've hired a consultant. We've put together the strategic plan. So this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and I think could be a real big game changer for a lot of farms out there. So why don't we dive in? Thank you for sharing that. Why don't we dive in? Take it from the top. What is strategic planning?
So strategic planning, I always lead with strategic planning is a journey. So you have to be ready. It's not a one and done. I always like to talk about there's the event of strategic planning. There's the journey of strategic planning. There's deep dive strategic planning where you're really getting into a lot of details. And then there's the ongoing just strategy coaching of strategic planning. So absolutely, a strategic plan to me, and the way I describe it most easily for everyone, is a map that links where you plan to go and how you actually plan to get there. So it links people, it links time, it links resources. When I talk about resources, we talk about financial resources, we talk about capital resources or assets, whatever it is that you want, but it allows you to pull them all together. And so again, in short, a strategic plan is written down. Okay. It doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be glossy, but you want to write it down because it helps you to remember what you said you were going to do.
Have to keep it in the head and hope you remember.
Well, and good point, Tracy. It keeps it in the head, but if it's not written down, it truly is only in your head and makes it very difficult to share with other people. So again, writing down your strategic plan also allows you to share it more easily with those that are going to be involved in the implementation, and allows you to go back to it, refer to it. And probably the biggest takeaway that I want to give around the strategic plan is it's not because you've written it down that you can't change it. So that's a big part, is some people say, well, if I write it down, then I can't change my mind. And you can, but what the strategic plan will, I'll say, force you to do is to actually think a little bit more about why you're changing the plan. Are you changing it because it's too hard? Are you changing it because maybe there's some external factors that have come into play and you have to change it? Are you changing it because of no reason at all? You haven't dealt with anyone, you didn't like what mom and dad said, so you're just going to change the plan. And sometimes that is what will also cause your plan to fail. But we'll get into that a little bit later.
Okay. Excellent. So I sometimes feel like I have a sense to tell what the audience is thinking when they're watching this. And maybe that's because many of the producers out there are just like myself and my husband. And that's where I want to go with you. So often we're, as farmers, told we should do this and all this. And now Tracy's talking about a strategic plan. Like, why do I need a strategic plan? And one of the most important things as we go through, I think that'll become clear, but I like addressing the objections and the who's it for in advance, because often they might be like, no, this isn't for me, this isn't for me. So if you're a farmer sitting out there watching this, how do you know if strategic planning is right for you? And I want to back that up with part two. If you're a farm operation like myself and my husband, and most farms probably have a bunch of little kids, is that something that we do, or do we have to be a big farming operation, like a big corporation with like 20 staff?
Absolutely. Yeah. So who is strategic planning for? It's for absolutely anyone that has a direction that they want to take, a timeline in which they want to achieve it with. So we can break it down. You can create a strategic plan around buying your first house if you want to simplify. Wow. So, you're young, you're in your 20s, you want to buy a house. So that's the vision, the house.
Yeah.
So how are you going to get there? Well, you need a down payment, right? So, okay, down payment. I have to think about what kind of a house am I buying? What kind of down payment do I need? Do I want to pay CMHC or not? And so, okay, 25% is what I'm looking for. 25%. How long do I want to take to get to my 25%? Then you start working backwards from there and saying, okay, so then in order to get to that, I need to make this much savings per month. And so then you work back and you go, does that get me to my 25% in my 2, 3, 5-year time frame? It does. Okay, so now I've got the house in the vision. I've got my down payment for the house planned. I've got my timelines. How am I going to get there? How am I going to collect this down payment? I'm going to get a job. Okay, so I've got a job.
2 or 3. Yeah.
Or 2 or 3, exactly. Yeah. So it's about figuring out how are you going to get to that down payment is getting the job. So now, are you living at home while you're trying to collect this or not? And so you can start seeing that having a plan forces you to think about, is my vision realistic?
Nice.
And it might be, but maybe it's not a 5-year vision. Maybe it's a 10-year vision. Maybe it's a 20-year vision. And so it forces you to really think about it. So I've got a diagram here that I want to share with you while I go through this explanation. So this is a diagram that I've used quite often to describe the strategic planning process. So it's quite colorful. It's got a lot of pictures in there. But ultimately, you asked me the question. Let's get back to the question, right, Tracy? Is
you're doing great
for every farmer? Well,
I love it.
It really is about, what is your vision? Like, where are you going with the farm operation? And so it might be that you're trying to diversify. It might be that you want to stay as you are and you're a dairy farmer and that's what you want to be. But it really is about clarifying that vision. Once you have a clear vision of where you're going, then all the people, the time, and the resources that you've got are working together efficiently to achieve that vision. So imagine if there's no clarity on the vision. So, mom and dad have a vision, kids have a vision, you've got other staff involved in the farm, they've got a vision. And so all of a sudden you've got 5 different directions that you're headed in, and nobody's headed efficiently towards that same. So when you talk about who should you involve, it really is who's involved in the farm.
Okay.
And so you're going to work together and figure out, what is your vision for this farm? And so quite often it's about gathering everyone together and saying, asking that question, what is your vision? And so I've done different workshops, different exercises, and you can do this yourself as well, is just get those people involved in the farm and asking them that question, what is your vision? Writing it down, pulling it together, and looking at how similar or how opposed is this vision. Also getting people to talk about, how long do you think it's going to take you to get there? You want to do this in 3 years? Do you want to do this in 5 years? What's your succession plan looking like? Who wants to stop working as hard as they are right now? So all of these things come to play. So back to this little diagram is, that's the top, right? You're trying to get to that vision. Easier said than done.
The end goal. Yep.
Yeah. So, but it's good to have an end goal in mind to start off with, so that you can figure out what it will take to get you there. And this is the part that I mean, that you can keep that vision, but you might modify the timelines, you might modify the resources that you need, you might modify the people that are going to be involved at different times. So the other part, so once you've got kind of this bigger picture, I like to get back right down to the bottom of that image, which is the current context. And it's about understanding, where are you today? So where is the farm today? And so there's 2 components that I like to look at, and it's looking at externally, what are the external factors that are impacting your ability to achieve that vision, and what are some, which one did I say, internal, external? You want both. So you want to look internally, you want to look externally.
Okay.
And so there's a number of exercises that you can take that I call them, thinking exercises, because some people say, well, what am I supposed to be considering when I think of current context? And so I use the acronym PESTLE. So looking at the external environment, you're thinking politically, you're thinking economically, you're thinking socially, what's happening. And socially is not like, who's going out on Friday night. I'm thinking like, what's going on in terms of the demographics of the people, your community, where you're farming, the employability, who's out there. Then you want to look at technology. Technology is absolutely impacting the way people are farming today. Legal. Are there any legal obstructions in what you're doing? Is there a change to quota, for example, or, anything else that you might want to look at? And then the other part is the environment. What's going on environmentally? How is that impacting you? So the acronym PESTLE, understanding the current context. So PESTLE allows you to look at what's going on around you. And then you want to do, everybody's heard, or maybe not, the SWOT.
Oh, yes. Strength, weakness. Oh, geez. I'm rusty. Take it away, Josée.
Weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Oh, yes, yes. I was thinking SWOT, S-W-A-T. It's S-W-O-T. That's what messed me up. I'm like, A? Oh. Sorry. Take it away.
Bring the SWAT team in.
Pardon?
We're not bringing the SWAT team in yet.
Yeah. Depends how the planning goes, right?
Right. And so you're also looking at then the strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and threats. So strengths and weaknesses are internal. So what do you do well as a farm? What are you not doing well as a farm? And how does that impact some opportunities that you see on the horizon? And how does that impact some of the threats that might be coming on the horizon? So it's important to really do some introspection in there. And when we do the introspection, I can't take credit for this acronym, but I really like it. FISHMO is the next acronym. When you're looking internally, FISHMO is you're talking about finance, you're talking about your IT, your internal IT, about your strategy, you're talking about your human resources, your sales and marketing, and then your operations.
Okay.
So again, these are just acronyms to help you think through the current context. If you've got nothing to say about, what's going on socially, then don't worry about it. But, and I've got a whole list of questions that would allow you to think about what does that mean from a social perspective.
Okay.
And so that's the current context. And what's really important to me is that the current context should be something that is just part of your thinking day to day. What's going on? How is this going to impact? I watched the news last night. They made a big announcement. Is that going to affect me? And just being able to take that in and going, right, that is actually going to have an impact on, maybe the cost of inputs this year. I'm going to go back to my plan and readjust if I need to.
Well, prime example, the carbon tax going up, right?
There you go. So what's the impact on you?
To the budget.
Yeah. And the part about getting everyone involved in doing these types of exercises is that the onus is not just on one person to try and remember that. So if you get the employees, the family that are involved in the farm doing this analysis, then they might come up to you, and more heads are better than one. They might come back to you and say, hey, listen, were you aware that so-and-so wants to sell their land? Opportunity. Are we ready for it? Great. But if you don't open up that conversation and get other people thinking about it, you might miss out on that opportunity. So current context, super important, because then it looks at where are you going from a vision perspective. So what's in the middle of there? So once you've got that vision, then I like to break it down. So vision could be 5, 10, 20 years down the road if you've just finished a succession plan, for example. So how are you going to break that down? And I like to think, people used to talk about strategic planning being a 5-year plan. I think too much changes in 5 years. I like to think in chunks of 3. 3 years, and then you're looking at, what do I need to accomplish? So what are the broad aims, the things that I'd like to achieve in the next 3 years?
Okay.
So, and that again is a brainstorming exercise. So quite often what you can do is just, if you like sticky notes, you can write sticky notes, you put them on the wall, and then you start looking at what are some of the themes in terms of our goals or accomplishments that we're trying to achieve. And so you can get just the key family members or farm employees involved in that. You can do it as broad, and you start looking at what are some different ideas there. Okay. Then once you understand, and this is the key in 3. So we talk about 3 years. I like to think 3 goals. Anything more than that starts to be a lot of things that you're going to start working on. And these 3 goals can be, and this is where people get caught up, is I'll use the term, you want them to be strategic. But at the end of the day, remember I said at the beginning, strategy is a journey. What's strategic to you today may be a drop in the bucket later on. So it's your journey. You've got to progress at the rate that you are going to progress. And so it's your journey. You get to decide how quickly you want to get there. You set some goals, and then you try and break that down into actions and the strategies. And so the strategies are where you bring in some critical success factors, some barriers. So in order to achieve that strategy, what do I need to put in place? A critical success factor. What do I need to get out of the way? You know, is there a big boulder that I need to blow up? Or am I going to chip at it? Or am I just going to like slice it in half? What's that barrier? What do I need to get out of the way? And then it really starts saying, all right, so what am I going to do in the next 3 months? So we had 3 years, 3 goals, and now I'm going to say, what am I going to do in the next 3 months?
Nice.
And then you start breaking that down again. What am I going to do this month? What am I going to do this week? And so again, not looking for Shakespeare here. You're looking for, you know, if bullet form is what you need, and you just start writing it down, giving yourself timelines, giving yourself who's going to do it, and then what are the resources required. And so at the end, you can see in the diagram, I've got a little people, I've got some cogs, I've got some dollar signs, I've got, you know, clocks. And this is where, you know, the rubber hits the road. You know, it's about taking that plan and making it a living document. And it is, granted, you've got day-to-day activities, right? The farm is not a place where you've got nothing to do. But if you want to achieve that vision, you have to give yourself the opportunity to move away from the day-to-day and look at what is the strategy that's going to get me there. How do I give myself permission to think at a higher level and give myself time to do these activities that maybe aren't the chores that I have to get done today, but maybe I need to reassign those chores to somebody else so that a couple of hours every week, I can think about where I'm taking the farm long term.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask you a question? I see this process. I imagine it's important at all times, but what this screams to me is building your farm and succession planning as 2 super important times to have this. And I'll be a little bit long-winded, but I'll try and make it quick, Josée. Back when I was younger and building businesses, and still to this day, I've changed because I've done strategy planning. Back in the day, you make these big lofty goals, you put it on a paper, and then you just go work, and then you're a little scattered because you don't have the strategies, right? So that time comes and you go, oh, I didn't achieve that because you don't have the actionable steps. Now I find, because I've gone through this procedure and still do it, I'm very strategic. And where if farmers are still sitting at home going, well, I know what I want to do. I just want to grow the farm and, you know, buy land as it comes up. There's something about having a plan I've learned, instead of going, this is the end goal and just letting life happen. I've learned that having the strategic plan, there's the end goal, but it just gets you thinking critically and step by step. And not only that, you become accountable to it, right? Where if you want to grow, maybe you need to be not investing in this, right? And it kind of becomes that beacon. And that's where I see the strength in strategic planning. That kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, Tracy, you really hit the nail on the head there. And it goes back to the comment that I made right at the beginning, is your plan links your resources to where you're going to go. So once you've got your plan, is you want to align your projections to that. You want to align your budget to that. We haven't even gotten into, the what I call the measurements. So what gets measured gets done, right? Yes. And so as you become more sophisticated, more comfortable in the strategic planning, I like to add another layer in there, and it's about setting objectives. So objectives are SMART. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And so your objectives are tied to those goals. And the reason the objectives become so important is they will decide how aggressive you want to be in achieving that goal. Mm-hmm. Going back to, I want to buy the house, so you can set an objective of, I'm going to come up with my down payment in 5 years. Okay. Or I'm going to set an objective to achieve my down payment in 1 year. So the actions that I have to take to get my down payment in 1 year are going to be a lot more aggressive than if I give myself 5 years to get to that. So this is why, the alignment and writing things down so people can see what you said you were going to do. And all of a sudden to say, like, are you crazy, Tracy? Do you really think that we're going to come up with, 25% down payment in 1 year? Like, that means that we can't go out. It's a decision that you have to make, right? And so the plan and the writing of that plan is important. But the other part as well is also, just business practices. So I didn't mention this, but, in some of the farms that we work with, we use our tool called Farmcaster. And it's a tool that allows you to look at your historical information and make some future predictions, some planning. And so an element of strategic planning is also scenario planning. It's the, what if we did this?
Okay.
So before I get too ahead of myself on the scenario planning, just going back to the metrics and the benchmarking, and so benchmarking is important. You can benchmark against your own operation. Mm-hmm. We do from year to year, but the only way you can benchmark effectively is if you write it down, so you can refer back to it, right? Uh-huh. And look at it consistently from one time to the next, right? And so in Farmcaster, what it allows a farmer to do is to put in that information, and then those metrics are calculated within Farmcaster for you. Ooh. You can benchmark against yourself, or you can benchmark against other like farms. Okay. To see, how well are they doing? And, I'm not one about keeping up with the Joneses, but sometimes it might shed some light into, wow, look at how effective they are operationally. Mm-hmm. I should explore that. What is it that they're doing? Like, why is that expense so low for them? What are they doing? So as much as you don't want to keep up with the Joneses, sometimes it forces you to look at your own operations to say, is there a better way of doing this? Is there a different way of doing this? And maybe there isn't. Maybe geography and whatever doesn't allow you to do that. So in the plan, I want to differentiate between being busy doing stuff. So you can do lots of stuff and not move the needle at all.
Absolutely.
So by having those metrics, those KPIs written down, you can ask yourself, okay, what am I doing? Is my working capital where I want it to be? Is my debt to equity where I want it to be? Is our, maybe you're trying to accumulate off-farm wealth. Where is that at? Maybe you're trying to track, cost of production or those types of things. So the KPIs, the metrics are also important, but it brings it back and it ties it all back to that vision of where you're trying to go, and are all of these activities getting you there? And if not, then change the activities that you're doing.
I love
it. That's why you can't just measure you can't just say, I was so busy last week, I did 100 things. But what did those 100 things do? Maybe there was one thing that you could have focused on that would have made a significant shift in your journey. And you didn't do that because you were busy. I like to call it the gerbil wheel, where we get on a little gerbil wheel and we run, hop off, you're tired, sleep, get back on there the next day. And so there's a time management piece, and we often live in that top left quadrant, which is doing the important and urgent stuff.
Yeah.
Strategy is that next quadrant over. It's important, but it's not urgent. But if you spent a little bit more time in that top right quadrant, you would actually be less busy running on your little gerbil wheel, because you would think through, am I leveraging this? Is there somebody else that could do this so that I could focus on something that's more valuable for my skill set?
I love it. You know what? I have completely forgotten how much strategic planning has changed the way I operate. I just naturally thought I was that good at planning. Really, I mean, in my business, which all businesses have our cycles, I now take it for granted, but I go in a year and I go, okay, by the end of this year, I want to achieve this. And then I break it down by quarter. If Absolutely. I want to achieve this by December 31st, 2021, I need to do this and this and this. And when you're on the farm or any kind of business, you generally start to learn how long activities and tasks and how many people you need, so you can start to chunk it down. Yeah, I'm just, as you're saying this, all the light bulbs are going off on the stuff I take for granted now, because I used to have those visions and then you're just way out in left field and you go, what? Yeah. But now it's pretty bang on. If I say I'm going to achieve this, it's because I've thought it through and I know how much goes into it. And then now I break it down, and you're just tied to it instead of just floating in, I want to grow the farm, la-di-da, right? Wait a minute, why aren't we growing? Because you just don't have those. Anyways, sorry, I had some light bulb moments there.
No, that's great. And you bring some really valid points. And so that is certainly a big part of it, is what I call the meeting cadence of strategic planning. And so when we think about a plan, so we've got that 3-year timeline, and you made that point, that 12-month timeline. And I like those timelines to actually coincide with your budgeting, planning type things, so that as you're doing your budgeting planning, you're making sure to put the resources in place that align with what you said you wanted to accomplish in your plan, right? So they're intertwined. And it's important as well, not just to have the dollars and cents, but who's going to do this? So when we think about any business, and a farm is a business, and we look at, your owner, general manager, of the farm. And so those people need to have a very clear vision of what it is that they want to do, but it's not a failure if they don't do it directly. The idea, again, is about, and I'll use the expression, pushing down as much as you can, going, who else can I get to do this?
Wait a minute, Josée. Nobody does stuff as good as I do it. Come on. Isn't that how we think?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, I can just do this in 10 minutes. Oh. How many times do you do that 10-minute activity
Amen.
Where it will take you 30 minutes to show somebody else how to do it, and you never have to do that 10-minute activity ever again.
Been there.
And so it's about giving yourself permission to not do something anymore. And so we can take that expression in a couple of different ways. So there are the sacred cows where, some people say we can never stop doing that. Well, sometimes you need to just look at that and say, do we really need to do that anymore? Like, why are we still doing it that way? I think there might be a different way of looking at it, but I'm starting to go down a different path. That's that rabbit hole, Tracy.
We're ladies talking about stuff we're passionate about. That's where the best stuff happens.
Yeah. So back to the meeting cadence, it really is about being intentional with your plan. And so that intentionality, that writing it down, getting other people involved, getting other people to understand where you're going, why you're going, allow the debate to take place. So when we think about it, so there's the 3-year event where you're looking, 50,000 foot level. You're really looking broadly. And then as you get closer to the timeline, you're getting a little bit closer to the ground level. And so when we think about it, you talked about your 12-month plan, and then you talked about the quarterly plan. And so every quarter, it's a really great idea to pull out that strategic plan. So if you established your vision, you have your values, culture that you've identified, you've got your 3 strategic goals, you've now defined the objectives that will help you achieve those strategic goals, and you've got your plan. You've got your quarterly plan, those activities that you're going to do that are going to move the needle. So at that quarter, you're going to look at your metrics, those KPIs, those needles that you wanted to move. You will have a baseline, you'll have a target, and now you'll have your actual, because you've done stuff for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So let's look at, and granted, some of those metrics, it doesn't make sense to look at them every day. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense to look at them monthly. So some of these metrics you'll only look at perhaps once a year.
For farming, often that way, right? Because it's a very annual cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there are some things in there that you might be able to look at. So after a season, you've got your crop in, and you just want to do a quick, okay, so we said we were going to do this. Did we do that? What changed? Why did it change? And it's important to have the meeting at that time because it's fresh in your mind.
Yes.
And document it. Why didn't we hit our budget? Why did we spend more? What happened? And what's interesting is that you can then go back and look at it at the end of the year and understand as you're planning for next year, learn from your past mistakes, learn from your past successes. And again, some of it is hope, but some of it is actually predictable, and that you can, and I'm not just talking about, seeding your crop or those types of things. There are other parts of the business. Did you skimp on, some of the mechanics? Did you not do the right maintenance on the equipment because XYZ, what happened? So it allows you to look at that. So the quarter is important. You look at the past quarter, what went well, what didn't go well, did you hit your targets? And then you're looking at the next quarter. Okay, this happened. How is that going to impact your next quarter? And this is where you have to give yourself permission to change those activities. But you're going to do it intentionally. So you have to think through, if you're going to not do this, what is the impact of not doing it? Mm-hmm. Is it better or worse than doing it? So it forces you to really think through. So you've got your past quarter, your next quarter, then we're into the next quarter. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest that, and perhaps during busy season, whatever that is, depending on the type of farm that you've got, don't not talk about strategy for 3 months or 2 months or even a month. Maybe you don't want to do it once a week. Maybe it's just every other week. Or maybe do it every week, but shorten the meeting. Just have a quick stand up. What are we doing this week? And I would imagine, you should be, and you probably don't even think about this as being strategic, but many of you at the beginning of every day, just group together. What's on the list today? What are we doing? But what does that today list add up to the week's list, add up to the month's list, add up to the quarter list, and they all tie it together. That is all part of building your strategy, but it's making it intentional. It's understanding how that day's activity ties into the 20-year vision. And so writing it down, speaking about it, sharing it, working together.
Love it. Can I hop in here with a thought?
Yes.
I want to run something by you. We have a strategy plan. I have it for my business, and we have one for the farm. How we want to expand, roughly how we want to do it, and we have that in place. But one of the things that just keep on going off in my mind and looking big picture at the industry and all the great advisors I speak to and my friends that farm, that have kids, where I really see strategic planning just like knocking it out of the park instead of just farming and sort of not ending up where you want to be. I see this happening. Okay, so I'm X years old. Let's pretend I have kids that are 17. Both of them really want to farm. I'm going to send them off to university. But where I see strategic planning really just knocking it out of the park for the industry, correct me if I'm wrong, Josée. For me, it's just that big picture, because I often see farm families, parents, and then we have kids. And then we know they want to come back, but we don't proactively plan for them to come back. They go to university, and then they're knocking on the door going, Mom and Dad, we want to come home and work. And we say, go work for a little bit, get some experience, and then come back. But what are we doing to plan? And to me, when I speak to all of you brilliant minds, and I look at my friends with kids of that age, or even younger, the better. Let's say I had kids and they're 5 and 7. And we hope 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever of them are going to want to farm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I know that the farming operation we have right now probably supports us. So if our kids are getting older and we know they want to come back, what drives me bananas is we're often so stuck in the day-to-day. We're not actually doing like you said. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm just passionate about this, where this vision, we want both our kids to come back and farm because they both love it. We're pretty much sure it's not going to change. So wait a minute. I'm going to go back to older kids. They're 17. We know we have some time, university, Maybe we should be expanding the cow herd with them. Maybe we should be buying that piece of land over here. And wait a minute, we know that someday they're going to want to take this over. Maybe we should be building up our off-farm investments so Anthony and I can live and support ourselves without having to dip into the farm, whatever. And I mean, this is a can of worms, but when I just see you talking about this, to me, it's the big picture. It's vision. What's the vision for the farm? And if we want 2 children to come back to that farm, instead of going, oh, you're here. Oh boy, this is going to be tight. We're going to have to pencil you guys in for employee, right? Instead of going, oh, we knew this was going to happen, but gosh darn it, where did those 15 years go, right? To me, right now, if we had those kids, like yesterday's the time to be starting on this.
Yeah. You, again, a great analogy, great story that you're saying. And, succession planning is very much an integral part to the farm. I mean, you look at businesses outside of agriculture. Businesses are built to be sold ultimately. Yeah. Otherwise, they're called jobs.
Right. Yeah.
And so the idea is how do you continue to add value, build wealth so that somebody else can take this over? How do you scale it so that you can actually walk away as the founder, say, or maybe you're already that next person that has taken over. And you said it, Tracy, you got a plan for it.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to go way into, sort of jump in there into succession planning, but to me, I see that as a strategic planning that starts right now as you're speaking about. And if somebody wants to call that transition planning later or somewhere down the line, to me, we're strategic planning right now with everything that you're saying.
Yeah. And so that's why it's important to have an appreciation for the vision, but while also looking at those metrics. How are you going to measure success for your farming operation? And getting agreement on that, because not everyone is going to see it the same way. And sometimes it's also that realization that, wow, like we are not going to be able to employ everyone on the farm. So now what? Now what do we do? And so this is absolutely a part of the plan. And so it becomes, going back to strategic planning, when you look at it as well, there are the different components. You are going to look at your human resources. What does your organization chart look like? What are the roles in a business? Who's wearing that hat? As you're scaling an operation, quite often you're wearing all of them. And then all of a sudden you've got a little bit more bandwidth. And so you've got new people, so you can start getting rid of some of those hats. And as a business owner, a measure of success is not wearing them all. I would say a measure of success is having the least amount of hats possible. If you can walk away from your operation and go on vacation, you have done well. And so that takes planning. It absolutely does. And so that is, succession planning is very much a part of building strategy on the farm.
Sorry, I went way out there, but to me, if I was looking at strategic planning for the farm, that's kind of where I'm going, like that big vision. And yeah, I guess we're blending transition planning in that conversation, but I guess it's a pet peeve of mine because I see a lot of farms that want to support multiple families, but there's no thought process that goes into it or strategic planning. I'm going, wait a minute, as an industry, if we start this mentality of strategic planning, then we're going to be able to get to those goals that we want to, right?
Right. And again, so it goes back to multi-year projections.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? Again, just to give an example, in using Farmcaster, is you're able to create different scenarios and look at how does that impact my farm down the road. And so you put in your own criteria and you figure it out. I mean, scenario planning is absolutely something that I recommend to my clients, because it's what if your key person leaves? Have you thought about what is the impact? What if they leave and they tell you? What if they leave and they don't tell you? How, and you just, what are the risks in your organization, and what are you going to do if those actually happen? So once you've got your plan in place, I mean, these are things that you can really get into, and that's where, it's not a hope anymore. What if we have 3 bad crop years in a row? We did some planning. We thought about that because it has happened. So what are we going to do? But what did we learn from the time that it happened before? What can we do to better position ourselves? And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Nobody said this is going to be easy. But the more that you think through it, the more that you plan. And again, I'm not doing analysis paralysis here. So it's about carving time. So that meeting cadence, rather than thinking about it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, go, all right, we've got our meeting planned. I've set aside Monday afternoon. I've got a few hours. I'm just going to put this out of my mind until Monday afternoon, because that's when I do my planning, or that's when we're going to have this meeting. And it allows everyone involved to say, it's okay. I'm going to jot this down because in a month from now, we're going to have our management meeting again. And this is where I get to address that. And so, you can read tons of books. I had my little book pile there. I'll show those up. I didn't invent strategic planning. It's been around for a really long time. There's been a lot of books that have been written about it. The cheat sheet part of it is write it down. Write it down, share it with other people, come back to it regularly.
I love it. I just so many light bulbs going off when you say this, and farming more at the beginning, I'm like, and I guess I started to take for granted what strategic planning is, because to me, it's what I do now, but especially in farming. And like you said, if you have 3 bad years, what are you going to do? Well, maybe instead of when commodity prices go up and everything's great, we're not going and buying all kinds of new things. We're maybe squirreling away a little bit. Mm-hmm. Strategically planning a cushion for when stuff is not great. Anyways, so I'm just having all these light bulb ideas. And I think this, honestly, this strategic planning, I think could just really change the industry and farms and the ability of the farm to continue on. Because if we're planning, right? If we're planning, we're going to be more successful. If we're more successful, that farm can continue on and be passed on. And that's what we all want, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and you didn't quite say it, but I'm going to bring it up as well, is when you have the strategic plan, it allows you to ask better questions of the people that you're surrounded with. So you all have, or many of you have, I should say you all, professionals that you work with. You probably have an accountant somewhere, you'll have an agrologist, or you'll have a vet or someone that you're calling on. But when you have that plan, it allows you to ask better questions because you're anticipating what you're going to do, so you can pre-plan. So if you don't know the cost of something, you ask those questions, you put it into the budget. But where I was really going with that is, once you've got a better plan in place, what we've also suggested to some of to our farm clients, is producer clients, is about creating an advisory board. And so a formal advisory board where they can help you achieve your plan, your vision. So you are going to carefully select a group of 3, 5 starts to get a little on the high side, of people that have experience in the different aspects of your plan, to ask you questions, give you advice on the direction that you're taking. And so I myself am a member of a farms advisory board, and what I've been coaching them on as their advisor. So it's not a consulting role. I'm on their board, so I'm looking after their interests. I'm not a shareholder. I'm just someone that they've asked to be on their board and to help them out. And so my contribution has been helping them solidify their strategic plan, so that when they are meeting with the rest of the advisors who have different experience than I do, some of them have a stronger financial background, some have a very high level view on agriculture. But what we've been able to do is, now that you've got this plan, what questions you want to ask. So we've got this tool that we've called it the OIC, the opportunities,
I like that,
and the challenges. And it's structuring the question that you want to ask so that you get a better answer from your question.
Gold.
So you don't have to save this OIC for advisors. You can use that even, as maybe you're a little bit, you don't want to ask for help, because it feels like you're showing weakness. Well, you can't know it all, and nor should you, So what is the question that you're trying to ask? So you want to think about, what is the situation? What's working well? What's not working well? What are the alternatives that you thought about? what are the criteria that you're using, and then ultimately, like, what is that, and I can't figure this piece out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives people an opportunity to look at, okay, you've thought it through, this makes sense. All right, so now let's dig in, let's ask that question. And again, this is part of that strategic planning cadence. Going, how? You've got your quarterly meetings, you know what's coming up, you know that you've got this succession coming on board, and it's a little complicated because you've got some joint ventures, you've got some incorporated, you've got some handshakes in there. What are we going to do? So you want to plan better. And so again, a written document helps you to see further with more clarity, and then also allows you to see backwards because you've written it down, you've documented it so that you can learn from those mistakes. Which makes me think of just because you tried it once doesn't mean it's never going to work again. So sometimes it's just you had a really great idea. It was just the wrong timing.
Yes.
So, that's also an important part of strategy, saying, we evaluated this, we understand why we failed, park it, this is what we need to put in place, then we can try it again.
Yeah. I've had that before where you go, I think it's this, and then it doesn't work out. And then you go, oh, maybe that just wasn't the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, ball, right? Okay. Wow. There's so much good stuff. So we covered what is the strategic plan, the goal of it, what's included. We've covered measuring and meeting rhythm. What else would you love to add, Josée? That's some good stuff there. I love how our conversation just is totally like two ladies, and we just take it where it goes, and here we are. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so probably the question that people are asking is where do you start?
Yeah.
So certainly I've got some free tools. If you want, I can share those. The other part is when do you need someone to guide you through a strategic plan?
Perfect question.
And so when do you hire a facilitator? And certainly it's when you don't know how to do it. So someone, and not just any facilitator, but when I'm talking about strategic planning, somebody that has a methodology and approach that they can guide you through the process. And so if you don't know how to go about it, you can read a book, there's lots. And if that's not the way you think, you can hire a facilitator that can guide you through. And what the facilitator will allow you to do is give you that process. So you probably get through building your strategic plan faster because they know what they're doing. They've done it a few times. But the other part is they're that neutral third party that can come in and can bring in the different players together. And they are the one that is allowing different people to have the conversations while giving everybody, an opportunity to say what they have to say by, diffusing potentially any difficult conversations, by breaking it down in a way that people have time to think, they can come back, they can share, this person can write it down. Quite often the facilitator can do the challenging without getting,
hitting the buttons that family can hit.
Well, you might hit the buttons, but they're usually got some skills around diffusing those buttons so that they don't escalate. They can call a timeout if need be. You can reschedule, you can have different meetings because there are different levels. So there's, and so that the facilitator will guide the process and will allow you, let's say you're kind of the leader of this farm, it'll allow you to participate and be a better listener as well. So because you don't have to worry about managing the meeting and getting through everything that needs to happen. And so that's another part that you can certainly consider.
Excellent. That's some good stuff. Okay. Any final words of wisdom when it comes to planning? That's a lot of good stuff there. And I love it. I'm going to throw in some words of wisdom here for the first time. I just see now, realizing how much I take for granted my ability to do a strategic plan. I can just see how much this would change farmers and their farm operation for the time being, but also going forward for the future. So I believe this is a powerful tool, and I'm so happy you shared it. So any final words of wisdom for our audience? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I think it's more of a reminder that everyone's strategic planning journey will be different.
Yeah.
Because we all will put it into play at a different pace. We all actually have different elements coming at us. And so what's important in this is certainly we want comparisons, we want benchmarks, but this is your journey, right? Yeah. This is your vision, your journey. There's no right or wrong answer. They're your metrics, they're your benchmarks. And so this is your plan. And your plan can be shared as broadly or as narrowly as you want. But certainly by writing it down, I promise you that you will get there faster. By following those steps, you will get there faster. You will learn, you'll be better, you'll involve more people, you will actually be more curious. You will let people make suggestions. You will sometimes accept those suggestions. You may reject them anyways.
If you have to.
A foundation on which to decide why you're accepting or rejecting. So it certainly forces you to really think about who you are, who are the people that are on your team, and how are you going to work together to achieve that vision. So writing it down. What gets measured gets done.
I love it. That was amazing. Okay, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with us, Josée. I, as you know, had many light bulb moments, and I am confident everybody in our audience is having the same types of thoughts and are probably excited to start this process. So if people want to reach out about some of those tools you mentioned, or if they just have questions or even want to hire you guys as a facilitator, how can they connect with you?
Well, you can go to our website, which is backswath.com. You can call us, 204-275-0458. You can email me, josee.lemoine@backswath.com. And I think those are all the ways that you can reach.
Excellent. And we'll put all these links and contact methods in the show page as well. So if people want to reach out, just go to the show page and you can find how to connect with Josée and Backswath. So thank you so much, Josée. I appreciate your time. And thank you guys in the audience for joining us on another episode. If you liked it, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And see you next week on the next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Tracy.
You're welcome. Thank you, Josée.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.